السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على خاتم الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد النبي الأمين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. Thank you all for coming. Tonight we have a special edition of the College Young Professional series. And before I get into any of it, we're going to start with the best thing to start any program with, which is the recitation of the Quran. So with that, I invite Brother Muhammad, inshallah, to start us off.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون واعتصموا بحبل الله جميعا ولا تفرقوا واذكروا نعمة الله عليكم إذ كنتم أعداء فألف بين قلوبكم فأصبحتم بنعمته إخوانا وكنتم على شفا حفرة من النار فأنقذكم منها كذلك يبين الله لكم آياته لعلكم تهتدون ولتكن منكم أمة يدعون إلى الخير ويأمرون بالمعروف وينهون عن المنكر وأولئك هم المفلحون ولا تكونوا كالذين تفرقوا واختلفوا من بعد ما جاءهم البينات وأولئك لهم عذاب عظيم يوم تبيض وجوه وتسود وجوه فأما الذين اسودت وجوههم أكفرتم بعد إيمانكم فذوقوا العذاب بما كنتم تكفرون وأما الذين ابيضت وجوههم ففي رحمة الله هم فيها خالدون تلك آيات الله نتلوها عليك بالحق وما الله يريد ظلما للعالمين ولله ما في السماوات وما في الأرض وإلى الله ترجع الأمور كنتم خير أمة أخرجت للناس تأمرون بالمعروف وتنهون عن المنكر وتؤمنون بالله ولو آمن أهل الكتاب لكان خيرا لهم منهم المؤمنون وأكثرهم الفاسقون صدق الله العظيم.
Jazakallah khair, Muhammad. Let me just back this up a little bit, just so we can go over the agenda or the timeline for the program tonight. So inshallah, the next thing we're going to go over is the dhikr of the week. As you know, this those who regular attend, and for those who have don't normally attend, this is what we normally do at the CYP. It's not just about the keynote speaker and the topic. We always have a theme, and we always have something to learn and to grow on, and also a take-home action, and something that's basically things to inshallah for us to reflect on and grow between each episode. So tonight, inshallah, the dhikr that we're going to review today, for this week's episode is the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, in which he said, قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم كلمتان خفيفتان على اللسان ثقيلتان في الميزان حبيبتان إلى الرحمن سبحان الله وبحمده سبحان الله العظيم. Allah's Messenger ﷺ said, two words are light on the tongue, they weigh heavily in the balance, and they are loved by the most merciful one. These two words are, glorified is Allah and praised is He, glorified is Allah the Most Great. So let us take a moment right now to say it within ourselves so that we can, inshallah, start the habit. If we don't already do the habit, let's start the habit today. Say it within yourself a few times. Subhanallah wa bihamdih, Subhanallah al-Azim. Subhanallah wa bihamdih, Subhanallah al-Azim. Subhanallah wa bihamdih, Subhanallah al-Azim. We're very excited with this effort that we're doing with the college young professionals. We are, inshallah, having our first annual conference, inshallah, next month in October. The weekend on Saturday, it's a day-long conference, Saturday, October 21st. And as you can see, we are headlining some very amazing and inspirational and motivational speakers, featuring, inshallah, Dr. Yasir Qadi, Dr. Umar Sulaiman, Ustadha Zainab Ansari, Sheikh Sulaiman Hani, Imam Suhaib Webb, Sister Iman Atiyah, and Sheikh Yasir Burjaz, who's not last but not least. The theme of the conference, inshallah, is the path to guidance, and it is inspired by the young men of the cave, or young people of the cave. إِنَّهُمْ فِتْيَةٌ آمَنُوا بِرَبِّهِمْ وَزِدْنَاهُمْ هُدًى. We increase them in guidance. So if you can scan that QR code, inshallah, and that will give you more information. So for now, save the date, mark your calendar for Saturday, October 21st. And it's going to take place at the Plano campus of Collin College. So we'll be doing that. Inshallah, I'll turn it over to our interim executive director, Brother Muhammad Aftab Diwan. Mashallah, you know what? Get over here. I'm not going to introduce you. You know, you're a very well-known person around this community, and if I were to start, I'm not going to stop. So, tfaddal.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I don't know about anyway. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulil Kareem. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. All praises to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Peace and blessings be upon His messenger, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I'm not here to give you a speech, even though I could, right? I just wanted to welcome everybody, right? And last time when I was here, before one of the programs, I just want to put a thought that's already there, but just to remind us, right? That I hope we all, or all of us here, understand what Mass is and what Mass is trying to achieve and trying to do, right? Mass is supposed to be and is very different than the other Islamic center or the masajid. That doesn't mean better or worse, just different, right? So while we're here, I want us to think about one thing. Each individually, like each one individually, just, we talk about the concept of intention and niyyah. And sometimes, as we were raised, we trivialized and simplified the concept of intention to something verbal and just to think superficially about what it is that we're about to do. But it's far, far deeper than that. And then simply the utterance of what we're doing, right, has to be backed up by a sort of deep reflection. So I just wanted to simply think about or ask yourself this question and continue to sort of debate that or reflect on that within ourselves. That why are you here? Not here as the philosophical question of life, but why are you here today? And really explore that within yourself to ask yourself, why am I here? Right? And now, of course, we're not going to start a discussion on it. I'm just here to just give us some thought about what is Mass. Right? And then as we're thinking about why we are here, I will leave you with a simple question that Allah Azza wa Jal poses to us, where He's asking us, أَيْنَ تَذْهَبُونَ? Where are you going? Right? Because as we try to reflect upon where we are, and at the same time, where are we headed, it makes our journey much more meaningful, provided that our reflections are connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So please think about it. And from a Mass perspective, the purpose of us all being here together is far deeper than the fortunate sort of experiences we have of having great speakers like Sister Dalia and some of the speakers you saw coming to the event and who have presented here in the past in this platform. That's a blessing, but it's far, far deeper than that. Our presence here and the goal behind what Mass and we're trying to do here. So please, let's reflect upon it, right? And let our reflections drive us, not only to understand why we're here and where we are going. And inshallah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our journey be towards Him and towards what pleases Him. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us to abstain away from that which displeases Him, inshallah. Ameen. Jazakumullahu khairan. Welcome. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Jazakallah khair, Brother Aftab. SubhanAllah, doesn't matter if I'm 18 or 38, you always teach me something. Jazakallah khair. I really do value the wisdom that you always impart. Jazakallah khair. You're saying I'm old, right? No, I'm saying I'm old. You stay young. Alhamdulillah. Inshallah. With that, inshallah, we'll get to the main course of the event tonight. I'll introduce, inshallah, Sister Dalia Mogahed, and in my introduction I have her bio. But before I do that, I want to kind of link what Brother Aftab was talking about with what we're doing here at Mass, and how tonight actually winded up happening. So I know a lot of you know me, that I'm very active here. Alhamdulillah, this is the platform or the vehicle that I usually use to serve Islam is through this effort here that we call Mass. And Alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me the opportunity to make my career out of working in Muslim non-profits. And for the last year now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave me the opportunity to work at a Muslim non-profit called Bayan Islamic Graduate School. And the work that we're doing right now is impacting Muslim communities all across the nation. The work that we're doing right now is what we do. We offer our Muslim leaders all across the nation accredited master's and doctorate degrees, so that they can get the professionalization and the skill set, so that they can take their impact to the next level, so that they can better serve our communities to the needs that we are experiencing, and make Islam relevant in our context. And in the work that we're doing right now, this coming weekend, starting tomorrow night, with Bayan, we brought Sister Dalia for this tour that we're doing all around Texas, and we saw the opportunity that Sister Dalia is coming into town. And I have both hats on. I never take off my Mass hat, and I'm always, and whenever I'm doing my Mass work, hey, who's a potential student that could be at Bayan that we could inshallah invest in, so that they can take their work back to Mass and take the impact to the next level. So I'm always wearing both hats, so I thought to myself, inshallah, this is an opportunity that while Sister Dalia is in town, that we could borrow her and use this collaboration between the two organizations to inshallah make a positive impact in the community while she is here. So that's kind of like the backstory of how this winded up happening. And so with that, we wanted to invite you all present. If you have not already gotten your tickets to attend our benefit dinner tomorrow night with Sister Dalia, please do so. You can see me for how you can get your tickets, but simply put, bayanonline.org/Dallas Gala. bayanonline.org/Dallas Gala. And inshallah, we will see you all tomorrow night. For tonight's program, Sister Dalia is going to give a particular address addressing you all. Tomorrow, she's going to talk about something that is going to be really, really impactful for the entire Muslim community, not just here in Dallas, but all across America. Her bio, inshallah, Sister Dalia is a researcher, a pollster, author, advisor, and consultant who studies Muslim communities. As a director of research at the Institute for Social Policy and Understanding, ISPU, Dalia Mogahed keeps her finger on the pulse of the Muslim world. She served on President Obama's Advisory Council on Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships in 2009, advising the President on how faith-based organizations can help government solve persistent social problems. Sister Dalia is a former executive director of the Gallup Center for Muslim Studies, a nonpartisan research center that provided data and analysis to reflect the views of Muslims all over the world. She and John Esposito co-authored this book right here that I pulled from my personal library, Who Speaks for Islam? What a Billion Muslims Really Think. And it's based on 6 years of research and more than 50,000 interviews representing Muslims in more than 35 predominantly Muslim countries. Is accounting for more than 90% of the world's Muslim population. This poll is the largest, most comprehensive study of its kind, and Sister Dalia later appeared as a commentator in the award-winning PBS broadcast documentary Inside Islam, What a Billion Muslims Really Think, which is based on this book. So with that, Sister Dalia, please come up and share with us your thoughts.
Thank you so much for that very generous introduction. Assalamu alaikum. So first of all, Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. First, I just want to thank you all for taking time out of your busy lives on this evening to be a part of this conversation. I want to share with you tonight some reflections on community and contribution. I was raised in Madison, Wisconsin, in a household where my parents served the community as a matter of their lifestyle. They were both, they came to the United States as graduate students from Egypt. I was born in Egypt and arrived in Madison when I was 5 years old. And we grew up in an environment where there was always a family staying at our house at any given time of the year, because we were sort of the Ellis Island of coming into Madison and reestablishing or establishing yourself, you know, as a student. It was the Mogahed household that would host people. We were a family that was always cooking for somebody. We were a family that always was picking someone up from the airport. And so my parents modeled these values to us. They didn't tell us to do these things, but they lived these values. And I will tell you something somewhat personal. My father passed away a year ago, and Allah yarhamu, he was really a great man. And a lot of people, and I'm just telling you facts, a lot of people have asked me and come up to me and said, you know, mashallah, what did your parents do to raise you and Yasmin? And they don't know my third sister, who's the smartest of us, Muna. So we're three girls. Mashallah, you know, what did your parents do? You tell us what was their secret ingredient in their parenting. And I have to be honest, a lot of things my parents did I would not repeat, and I don't think that's the model in terms of direct parenting, okay? But what they did do that I think put barakah in our families' lives and led to barakah in their children is their service to the community. You see, it's this secret sauce, this mechanism whereby you serve the community and that barakah comes back into your family. And that really is it. What you do directly with your kids almost is secondary. And I'm not saying parenting isn't important. I'm just saying from my experience, you know, all the things you read in a parenting book, that's not how we were raised. We were, you know, we had a very strict upbringing. And all the stuff about gentle parenting, no, none of that applied in my household. Alhamdulillah. But it's almost like their secret was how they served. And they were such, mashallah, ethical, good humans. We saw ethics in action. That's how we learned how to be. And so I want to start with that story and that background to explain what you get out of serving. you truly will get more out of it in the goodness that you will experience in your life than what you give in. What this upbringing did for me is it helped to form my identity in a very unique way. And I want to spend a minute discussing this idea of identity. I love reading and listening to podcasts about psychology. I'm not a psychologist, I'm an Egyptian, therefore I was an engineer. And that's not my field, at least not training-wise, but I am so interested in social psychology. I've read probably like 30 books, and I'm always hearing podcasts. And one thing I learned about the power of identity is how much it drives your behavior. So what does that mean? There's this concept called consistency, right? What does that mean? It means that if you believe you are someone who lies, you've been called a liar, you will lie. You will almost not be able not to. If you have an identity about being someone who is generous, because that's how you've been raised to believe, you will behave in that way. So we have to be very careful the kind of language we use with our children about their identity. And then the idea of formation of identity. Who are we primarily? What is our primary identity? And we have to come back to the very beginning of how we were created. If I start to think of myself before I'm a mother and a wife and a daughter and a sister and everything else, if I start to think of myself as a khalifa for Allah, إِنِّي جَعَلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً, for Allah to give us this honor, responsibility, and mission and purpose, it completely changes the way that we show up in the world. If that becomes our identity, if I am thinking of myself as the vicegerent of Allah, the ambassador, the one representing His will on earth, and I have this sense of izzah inside me, it becomes so inconsistent with behaving in a way that tarnishes this identity. If we build this identity in ourselves and in our children, it will be one of the most powerful ways for them to stand their ground when they're being pushed in a different direction. So I want to start with this idea of identity. I also wanted to mention that we are about to embark on Rabi' al-Awwal. Of course, it's the season in which the Prophet ﷺ was born. And how can we draw inspiration for how to be community builders and contributors, fulfilling this identity, fulfilling this mission, this sacred purpose, by understanding His example and the example of His brothers, His other prophets, the other prophets in the Quran. What do we learn from his seerah about building strong communities and contributing to society as a whole? And I'd like to share some reflections on that topic. The first one is the idea that to fulfill this purpose, it is about an inside-out process. Growth, according to the Islamic methodology, is one that begins in the heart. That is the seed and the seat of community growth. If you want to change the world, the first thing you have to do is work on your heart. If we look at the way the seerah unfolds, we know that the beginning of this small, unlikely community that literally changed the world. I just came back a few months ago from Andalusia. When you go to Muslim Spain and you see what the Muslims built, that is still the marvel of the world, going to Alhambra, going to Granada, you feel so much pride in what they created, and all the way in Europe. So this tiny community in the backwaters of Arabia that no one even thought about, wasn't a superpower, went on to build this amazing civilization. But they started with hearts, with being told to believe and to purify. So that's the beginning. That is the start of any kind of growth or community contribution. The second thing I think we need to do, beyond the inside-out growth, is we need to redefine success. One of the things that was so beautiful about the Quran that we just heard is, I often think about this idea of defining success. So if you are in the corporate world, if you've ever done any kind of project management, you know that before you start, you always have to define success. What does success look like? What are the metrics? How do you know you've accomplished, your goal? So defining success is critical. It's an incredibly important point that we can't skip over. We're told in the Quran, the idea of first inside-out growth, we're told that success as an individual looks like what? We know these ayahs so well. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا وَقَدْ خَابَ مَنْ دَسَّاهَا. So, successful is the one who purifies it. It's talking about the nafs. And a failure is the one who, and usually it's translated as corrupts it. In fact, the same word is used about burying a girl, burying your infant girl. Same word. It means literally burying yourself alive. That's what happens when you don't purify. Those are the options. Success or burying your heart and your soul alive. So it's that critical. It's that, it's that mission critical. But then what I realized in listening to the ayahs that we just heard is there's also a definition of community success. So it's so holistic. The Quran is so holistic because it speaks to the individual heart and it speaks to the community framework. And when it comes to defining the success of a community, we just heard in Surah Al Imran that, and I'll just kind of summarize, that it's about a community coming out who invites to what is good and enjoins the doing of what is right and forbids what is evil. And they indeed are the ones who are successful. وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. So this idea of falah, of success, defined as an individual as purifying your nafs, and defined as a community of being those who invite to what is good and forbid what is wrong. This is the definition of social activism, of contributing to your community, of standing up for what is right. It is how we define success. And what is so important about this ayah is it doesn't define who you're calling to good. It's not saying or who or for who the good is. It is left very general. The goodness that we are working toward and the evil that we are forbidding is a general term for all of humanity. Right now, I am doing a study of Surah Yusuf. Subhanallah, this surah is a treasure trove of meanings and lessons. One of the most beautiful lessons in this surah is how Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam was willing to help a society, not only that didn't share his faith in a neutral sense, but had done so much to harm him. He was still in prison, wrongly accused, and it was this society that had put him there. And they came to him and they needed help, and they said, interpret this dream. Now I want you to notice something. So here's the dream, if anyone is not familiar. The dream basically is the king had a dream that 7 cows that were skinny ate 7 cows that were fat. That's it. Tell us what this means. And he says, well, he doesn't just say what it means. He actually goes through a comprehensive economic plan for Egypt and the region, because we know even Palestine came to get food, how they were going to get through a drought. That for the first 7 years, there was going to be normal, agricultural harvest. Then for the next 7 years, there was going to be a drought. So you need to grow your food like you would normally, then you need to store it, and then you need to eat what is stored for the next 7 years. So those are the 14 years. But then he does something very interesting. And this is something I was blown away by. The king's dream only spoke about those 14 years, the 7 cows and then the 7 cows, okay? But Yusuf alayhi salam adds 1 more year to the interpretation that was never mentioned. And he says, and then there will be 1 year where the rain will fall plentifully and you will be able to juice, meaning that there will be so much plenty, so much rain, so much goodness, that you will have things that you can juice or you can press into oil, because you need a lot of rain for grapes and for olives. Now, first of all, you can ask the question, how did he know when it wasn't part of the dream? And second, why would he tell them? Why would he even mention it? And I was so fascinated by these 2 questions. And it shows, first of all, that he's willing to interpret the dream, tell him the plan, even though he's still in prison. Now, someone in his place might be saying, I have the answer, but I'm going to need you to get me out of prison first, then we can negotiate. Then I'm basically, in my hand is like the well-being of the nation. So I have leverage. And he had every right to do that, because he was in there on false accusations. But he didn't do that. He just offered the solution without any kind of condition. So first of all, he's willing to do that. Willing to contribute and give even with people who aren't good to him. But he was so muhsin, he had so much ihsan, that he added this beautiful extra piece of hope. Not only will this, but you will also have at the end of those 14 years, this year of plenty and comfort and luxury. Now, how did he, so that's the ihsan sen of not only giving them the economic plan, but even adding that bow of hope on the top. How did he know that year would be there? Now, this is only my reflection that I've discussed with my teachers, but what I see is that he knew that year would come because he knows the sunnah of Allah. That the sunnah of Allah is after hardship, there is ease. So he knew there would be a year like that. Because that's what we're promised. That after hardship, there is ease. We also know that even with hardship, there is ease. So what we learn from that is that the calling to goodness and the forbidding of evil is for everyone around us. He was a minority, he was oppressed, he was being wronged, and yet he used his unique talents to save Egypt and the surrounding region. How do we do the same thing? How do we discover our gifts so that we can do the same? How do we redefine success in our country here? A lot of times I'm concerned when I hear people ask me or others, what can we learn from other immigrants that have come into America, like the Irish or the Poles or whatever? They were kind of excluded at first, and then they kind of, made it into the mainstream. What can we learn from them? So it's not that there's anything wrong with learning from other communities. That's fine. But underneath this question is something that I think we need to really think about. Because we're learning because we think that they've made it. And that means we have a different definition of success than the one I just explained in the Quran. What did they do? They ascended a hierarchy in America. So there's a hierarchy, social hierarchy, class hierarchy, race hierarchy, and they went up. And now they have proximity to power. Is that our prophetic example of defining success? No, it's not. That is not our example. That is not how we should be defining our success as a community. We should be defining our success and looking for communities to emulate, if there are any, that abide by our definition of success, which is not to ascend a hierarchy that is not just. It is to contribute and to call to what is good. It is to question that hierarchy. It's to reassemble that hierarchy into something that is more just. If you think about what Rasulullah ﷺ did, think about his origins. So he lived in a tribal society, as we all know. In a tribal society, there is a hierarchy. There's the nobility, the best of the best, the cream of the crop. And then there's the weaker tribes, and it works in a very hierarchical way where people at the top of those hierarchies have more privilege, have more power, get to do whatever they want, and people who are from tribes that don't have that have very different, realities. What tribe and clan was he from? He was from Quraysh, the most powerful and noble. And not only that, he was from the most noble clan within Quraysh. He was a descendant of Ismail alayhi salam. They were the most noble. They were the ones who were caring for the pilgrims. But he came with a message. So he's coming and he's at the top of this hierarchy of a society. Like the Poles and Irish. Got all the way to the top. And he came with a message of truth that disassembled and reassembled a hierarchy hierarchy that was in his own self-interests. Right? How can we be his followers and instead of being at the top and disassembling it, we're actually at the bottom or near the middle, if that, and we are actually asking how do we go up? That is the wrong question and the wrong definition of success. The way that he defines success is through the Quranic vision of recreating, reimagining a society where we are calling to good and forbidding evil for humanity, just as Yusuf alayhi salam did in his example. The next sort of element of this broader vision is to be a part of a nourishing suhbah. We can't do these things alone. We need community. We need, when you look at social psychology, we need other people around us to help us believe that an idea is plausible. If we are the only ones, if we're working alone, we will not be sustainable. We need suhbah, we need community, we need companions. Even Rasulullah ﷺ had sahaba. And we need to be a suhbah, not a usbah. So here's what I mean by that. So in Surah Yusuf, so there are 4 places I found that the word usbah is used in the Quran. So here's the 2 that are famous, is the brothers of Yusuf, alayhi call themselves a usbah. They say, our father is just so misguided that he loves Yusuf and his brother more than us while we are usbah. Usbah meaning like a strong group. But it comes from the same root as asabiyya, comes from the same root as asab. It means a group that is bound together for the strength of the group. Now, listen to this idea. This is, I think, very powerful. One of the ayahs we heard in the recitation, I'm like, subhanAllah, there was some kind of mind, connection that all the ayahs I needed were already said. One of the ayahs in the recitation was about holding on to the rope of Allah. So what is the difference between an ummah and an usbah? Here's the difference. An ummah, what we're told to be, are a group of people holding on to a common rope of Allah. They're not holding on to each other's hands. They're not going like this. Right? This is usbah. Usbah is we're holding on to each other's hands. We need to be strong for each other. It's a tribe, it's a gang, it's a cult. We're going to be strong to defend each other. And ummah says, we're going to be strong because we're holding on to the same ethical framework, the same principle. And what is the difference between the two? The difference is usbahs cause genocide. If you study genocide around the world, it's a usbah. It's usness, asabiyya, usness against the world. No ethical, no ethical limits. It's about what's good for us. That's it. That's all we care about. And people join those groups, whether it's a gang or a cult or a tribe, because there is strength in number and there is protection in number. If you're a part of a group that's like us against the world, yeah, you'll get some protection and you'll feel some strength in that. So it's attractive. It's not like it has no benefits. It definitely has benefits. But it leads to these mob mentalities. When you study social psychology, you look at what people are capable of doing when they're in this usba situation, where their mind is usba oriented, where they're like this groupthink, mob mentality, causing atrocities, and it's like their mind has been taken from them. That's what you're risking. And it's interesting, so the 4 times in the Quran with this word being used is twice in Surah Yusuf, where the brothers are describing themselves and their sense of like entitlement and strength. Once in Surah An-Nur, where it's the group that was spreading the rumor, subhanallah. And then the 4th time is in Surah Al-Qasas, in an ayah that is describing Qarun and how the keys to his treasure needed a usba of men to carry them. So describing the strength of this group. That is not what we want. Muslims should never get to a place where it's us against the world and all that matters is, are we strong or not? We have to be principled in our unity and in our strength. The other model of holding on to the rope of Allah means that it's a community and not a cult. It means that we don't need uniformity. It means that dissent is welcomed and heard. It means that we are principled in the way we behave with other people, even when they wrong us, because we behave according to our Lord and not what they're doing. They're not our teachers. Our enemies are not our teachers. Our tormentors are not our teachers. One of the most powerful things I've ever seen, this is real life and it's modern, right? I was in Sarajevo. If you've ever been to Sarajevo, what you will find is any mosque in Sarajevo is like 15 years old. There are no mosques older than that. Why? Because the Serbs targeted mosques. They would target them and bomb them. So all the mosques that are in Sarajevo were built after the war by different Muslim countries. There are some from Turkey, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and different places built mosques in Bosnia and in Sarajevo in particular. But interestingly, the Church of Sarajevo is standing and completely unharmed. The Muslims did not retaliate by damaging the church. They were under siege for 3 years, where they were burning their furniture, their books, their own property to stay warm because they were completely cut off. And they never looted the church, even for firewood. And the reason is because their tormentors were not their teachers. They were holding onto the rope of Allah. They were not a usba. If they were, they would say, you did it to us, we're going to do it to you. That's the difference. I have an engraving of the Cathedral of Sarajevo. That was my token, that was my souvenir when I went, because it inspired in me so much pride in the way the Muslims handled themselves in a time of such dire desperation, where they were abandoned by the world. That is the difference. And then I will wrap it up. The final thought, we talked about identity, we talked about defining success properly, we talked about having suhba and community versus a usba. I already explained ihsan. The final thing that we need to do to truly build a community and contribute to the well-being of society as a whole might surprise you, because it's about letting go and moving on. One of the most to me, amazing facts about the seerah, and it's something we don't talk that much about or we don't reflect on, is Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam was given the choice to rule forever and stay with this power in the dunya. He had the chance. And imagine anyone being more needed. Who is more needed than Rasulullah ﷺ ruling justly in the dunya? How many, even his best friend, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, said, choose us. It's not that no one was telling him, or he didn't know he was needed, or he didn't know he was, they wanted him to stay. But he said no, and he chose Allah. What do we learn from that? None of us are going to get that choice, obviously. But a lot of us, myself included, this is, a normal human thing. We are in a place of authority in some capacity, and we don't want to let it go. We think we are just like the world's going to end without us. We are so necessary, and how are we, and then people around us are like, oh, we need you, please, stay for another 20 years. That's a delusion of all of us. We have to learn to let go. We have to learn to move on. We need to learn to mentor and train a second generation to come in. If we are so irreplaceable, that means that's a failure of leadership. If I haven't trained my successor and their successor, then I have failed as a leader. One of the most important parts of leadership is to make yourself unnecessary, to make yourself obsolete, to make yourself so that if you're not there, there is a system that has been built. When Rasulullah ﷺ was ill and sick in his apartment, and he looked out and he found, he saw Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu leading the salah. Rasulullah ﷺ had built other leaders up, had created a system where he could leave, even him, the most important human being that has ever existed. There's not even like a close second. And he made himself where he could leave and the ummah would be okay, where the community was ready. And when he saw that, he knew that he had fulfilled his mission, that he had built up leaders. A good leader, we used to say in management, I used to do management consulting. So something we would always sort of like this little kind of truism is A managers build and hire employees. B managers recruit and hire C employees. Because if you're a really good leader, you have other leaders around you. That's what you develop. So that you're training and you're building and you're creating a system and you're creating a legacy and you're creating something that outlasts you. And then there are other people coming up, the young people who are ready to take the baton, who are ready to take on that responsibility. So it's from both sides. There's that dedication from the young, and there's a sense of investment from the older generation and a willingness to pass the work on. So that's the final thought that I wanted to share with you. And really in conclusion, one of the most inspiring aspects for me of our faith is that it gives us such rich frameworks by which the individual is built, the individual is developed, and at the same time, how a community and a society is organized. All we have to do is reflect, study, and then implement. Jazakallahu khairan. Wassalamu alaikum.
Sister Dalia. It's really inspirational. Don't go anywhere. We need a Q&A.
Oh, okay.
We have a few minutes for Q&A, inshallah. So we'll start with the ladies. Just raise your hand up if you have a question that you would like Sister Dalia to address, inshallah. Going once. All right, there we go.
First of all, I know I speak on behalf of like everyone when I say that you're like a role model for the youth and for coming generations by far. And like
Thank you
since
so
the
much.
topic is all about like reforming society and things, and you've had such a huge role in like political reform and such things of that such. What do you advise for like people who want to enter, youth that want to enter politics but are afraid of like compromising their religion and things like that?
I'm glad we started with an easy question.
Will you repeat the question first?
Sure. So what the sister asked is, what's my advice for young people who want to enter politics but are afraid of compromising their values, basically. Yeah. It's really very hard. I will say, it's not something I can answer very easily at all. I will say that my role as in politics was always one where I was in the room as a researcher, not a representative of constituents. And there's actually a very big difference. I wasn't accountable to anyone except Allah, literally, and accuracy to the research. I was there to say what was uncomfortable to hear, but it was based on empirical data. That's a very different place. And so I was in rooms with policymakers and with, influential people, but I had this ability to, or I had the role, the way I was showing up in those rooms was as like a truth teller for research. That's very different than being an elected official, seeking re-election, seeking campaign contributions, having a very diverse constituency, of which many, whose lifestyles I don't necessarily agree with or endorse, and I still have to represent all of them. So those are two different things. I don't have a lot of advice, honestly, about the elected official side, because I see that as so difficult. That's why I've never gotten close to it. It's just, I don't know how to navigate that. But it doesn't mean you can't influence society. That's not the only route. It's not the only route to changing things. There's activism. There's organizing communities around changing something. There's doing great research toward, a cause that you care about. So I don't want anyone to think that the only path to societal change is through, running for office. Now, if you do want to run for office, I'm not discouraging you at all. I'm just not the right person to tell you how to do that without compromising. I haven't seen it done yet. I haven't seen anyone do it without compromise, so I don't know. Inshallah, someone figures it out. But, we have a two-party system. Both of them have compromises that you're making, right? So may Allah make it easy for the Muslims trying to do that. I just don't know how to do it. I'll be really frank and honest with you.
Anybody?
Is another-
Yeah. Sister, I also want to point to address your point directly. Here at the center, in fact, we just hired Brother Bashir Jones, who is a former councilman from the city of Cleveland, a graduate of Bayan, by the way. I always like to plug that in. And he's, so he can tell you firsthand experience on what that role would look like, right? And so we just hired him, and he's got a whole plan that he is working on executing with regards to Muslim influence within our interests towards in the political sphere. So
Great.
come back, come into the center. You'll see a lot of him, and stay in touch with the work that we're doing here at Mass and Mass Pace, inshallah. Where's the second question? Over here. Okay.
Thank you for your talk, by the way. Thank you for taking the time to be here. But the question I had is that obviously when you when you're saying all this, you want to obviously inspire the youth and inspire anyone basically to like be involved into the community. But I'm focusing on the youth right now. When someone says that like, oh, they're too busy or something like that for like, because they have university just like myself, I kind of feel like that gives like them and other people the excuse to basically not be involved. And also other people not to be involved, but specifically the youth. Is it more of that we need to start focusing more on more ways to get the, you know, the youth involved, or should it be that they should be just more open-minded and then try something new basically? That's
So we can't control other people, right? So the answer is really, what do we, when I say we, meaning the person asking the question or the people who are interested in the outcome of that question, what can they control and what can they influence? They can't control the youth who are saying they're too busy. They just don't have control over them. So what they can control and what they should focus on is what they can influence, which is the kind of programming or the ways that people can plug in. The topics that might be.
Ooh, put it down. Oh, yeah. It's alive, it's alive.
Okay. The topics that might interest some people more than others. I remember, so I majored in chemical engineering. If anyone thinks you're more busy than I was, like, just don't even try to tell me that. It was a nightmare. It was the worst, like, hardest major, I swear to God, in my college, in my university. But I still had time to do a lot of other things. So you're too busy because you're doing what? Like, what is it that is making you so busy? Sometimes what people mean by I'm too busy is I'm not prioritizing. And when someone's not prioritizing something, it's either that it doesn't meet their interests or they don't understand why it's important. So perhaps the first thing is to make a case for why it's important. Because we don't do things because they're easy, we do things because we think they're important. Okay.
Bismillah, test check 1, 2. No?
I think we turn it on.
This is always fun. There it is, found it. She's alive. Bismillah. Come on. Bismillah. There we go. Go ahead and wire yourself up.
Okay.
I feel like you should have used that instead of the handheld. Could've-
Right, yeah. So that's kind of, I hope that answers your question.
So I have a follow-up to that. So
Okay.
would you say that we need to start prioritizing about how the youth can improve on themselves before they can try to make an impact on society?
I think it's like they're parallel tracks. I don't think that one comes before the other. They have to happen at the same time because we never finish improving ourselves. We have to, it's a lifelong path. It's a lifelong journey. But as we're developing ourselves, we are also contributing to society. Like the tazkiyah of the nafs is not something that ends somewhere. It's like, okay, now I'm pure. Actually, the Quran tells you not to say I'm pure, right? You're never done. But you're always calling to what is good. You're always forbidding what is, wrong and unjust. And so they're happening, in parallel. Yeah.
Can we get a question from the sisters, inshallah? Yes, sister.
So first and foremost, I just want to say thank you for coming here. The talk was really, really insightful. My question is, in your opinion, is there such a thing as like a non-reformable society? Because I'm just gonna use like my own background as an example. We moved here from a community that lost more Muslims than it brought in, and there was just a point where the harder you try to help people, the more it backfired on you. And where does a person draw the line between trying their hardest to reform society and then fighting with their nafs and trying to hold on to that rope?
Yeah. It's it's a really good
Can we
question.
repeat the question? for me?
So the question is there such thing as a non-reformable society where the harder you work, the more it backfires on you and kind of harms you, and it doesn't seem like there's anything changing? So the first thing I will say is that there's a hierarchy of how we approach activism or how we approach societal reform. The hierarchy is you have to deal with your own well-being first. If you're not, if your whatever you're doing is harming you, harming your mental well-being, your physical well-being, your spiritual well-being, you need to take care of that. And then, because if you're not taken care of, then it's not sustainable. Then you're actually doing more harm than good because you're harming yourself. That's the first thing you need to take care of. You start with taking care of yourself, making sure you're safe. Then you can help others. That applies to anything, whether you're a young person doing activism, whether you're a parent, whether you're anything. You have to make sure that you are okay, and then you can help everyone else. Always put your oxygen mask on first, then help the one next to you. That's really a principle. So if you're in a situation for whatever reason where whatever you're attempting to do is harming you, then you need to reevaluate, and you need to change something about that situation, whether it's changing your approach, leaving the situation, leaving it for other people who might have different skill sets. But it's a red light. It's like a flashing red light. You know, when you're driving and you have your dashboard and your engine light is on and it's red, that's what it means when you're being harmed yourself. There's a critical problem and you need to stop and fix it. If you keep driving with your engine light on, which I've done, I'm not kidding, my engine literally lit up. I mean, fire was coming out of my engine. That is what happens when you ignore the light. Do not do that. Stop and take care of it. So in the situation that you're describing, I don't really know the details, so I don't know if it's unreformable or whatever, but what I do know is that if it is harmful to you, then you need to reevaluate and change, stop and change direction. And not every situation is up to us to solve. You know, some are just ones that someone else can do a better job. So always invest your time and energy where it is fruitful. There's going to be somewhere else where it's more fruitful. Don't hit your head against the brick wall. And that's really just advice in general in life. Put your energy and gifts where they can do the most good. Don't insist stubbornly on one path that isn't working. Okay?
Let's close that, John. Let me get that mic off.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Sister Dalia. I really
Welcome.
appreciate it. Inshallah, I really enjoyed your talk, particularly the whole thing was really amazing. But the part that really, I grasped onto it was when you talked about the difference between ummah and usba. That was just like whoa for me. So I really appreciate that. And what unites us. I really love that. I really love that. Jazakumullah khair. Inshallah, I mean, if you found Sister Dalia's speeches inspiring as I did, please again join us tomorrow night for Bayan's benefit dinner gala. It'll be at the Crystal Banquet Hall. We'll start after Salat al-Maghrib. Come at 7 o'clock so you can get your seat, and inshallah we can have and you'll hear from Sister Dalia and others about how how to reform society through Islam. This is one of the avenues that we're doing with Bayan, and we're empowering and uplifting our community leaders so that they are making real positive change, not only within the Muslim community, but in society at large. Whether we're talking about chaplaincy. We're talking, and of course, imams, youth directors, community activists, and so many other leadership positions where the impact is really being made. And I'm really happy to be part of this work. And inshallah, I invite you all to join us to support that effort, support the scholarships that we're funding. We started in 2011 at Bayan with just 3 students. We now have 80 graduates. Another 140 plus are currently enrolled. Our goal for the next 2 years, Abdullah, is to get to 500 students. 500 students. So, in 5 years, 5-year goal to get 500 students so we can be what's it? 5 years, 1,000. 5 years, 1,000 students. We want to be self-sufficient. Our 50-year plan.
We have another student behind us.
We have, oh yeah. Thank you. In fact, we just launched the first doctoral cohort of students, and mashallah, Brother Muhammad Iftab Diwan is part of that. Those 17 students that's starting this semester. This is your second week back in school? Mashallah. All right. Soon to be Dr. Aftab Diwan, mashallah. So please come out, inshallah, support that effort. We always have an action item with the college and young professional program. The action item, inshallah, for the next 2 weeks is identify your talents and interests, join the service crew, and make an impact. So we want you all to identify 3 points of strength that you have with your community and your society needs. Write them down. Don't keep it in your head. When you write it down, you can see it in front of you. Make it part of your vision board. Have it as a real goal in front of you. Write it down, one of the 2 areas of your interest to serve, inshallah, to utilize your talents in different spheres. Whether we're talking about educational, spiritual, sports, career, services, political, I'm going to throw in entertainment in there. Whatever it is, whatever you touch needs to be, inshallah, impactful for the positive impact for the society, inshallah. And join a program running activities for your interests with a promising action plan. Reminder again of the conference that we're having, inshallah, next month, October 21st, Saturday. Mark your calendar, save the date. Collin College, Plano campus, with all these, inshallah, very well-known and inspiring speakers. Inshallah, after Salat al-Isha, we're going to continue the program with Qiyamul Layl, and inshallah that'll be in just a couple of minutes. Sisters, after the Salah is the group code? Right now. So we're going to quickly end right now. Sisters, it's going to be a group picture with Sister Dalia. So let's go ahead and wrap this up so you guys can get that picture done before we go for the Salah. We're going to do a quick concluding dua. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد سيدنا وحبيبنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم أنت السلام ومنك السلام تباركت يا ذا الجلال والإكرام. اللهم يا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلوبنا على دينك. اللهم يا واصل المنقطعين أوصلنا إليك. اللهم حبب إلينا الإيمان وزينه في قلوبنا وكره إلينا الكفر والفسوق والعصيان. اللهم بارك لنا في جمعنا هذا وطهر نياتنا وتوفنا مع الأبرار. اللهم إنا نسألك الجنة وما قرب إليها من قول وعمل ونعوذ بك من النار وما قرب إليها من قول وعمل. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. وصل اللهم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Praise be to Allah, Lord of the worlds, and may the peace and blessings be on the most honorable messenger and prophet Muhammad and on his family and companions. O Allah, you are peace and from you is peace. Blessed are you, the most majestic and honorable. O Allah, the changer of hearts, keep us steadfast on the deen. O the one who connects the disconnected, connect us to you. O Allah, make faith beloved to us and beautify it in our hearts, and make disbelief, wrongdoings, and disobedience hated to us. O Allah, put barakah in this gathering of ours and purify our intentions and make us die among the righteous. O Allah, we ask you for heaven and whatever of words and actions that bring us closer to it. And we seek refuge in you from the hellfire and whatever of words or actions bring us closer to it. O Allah, accept from us, for verily you are the most hearing, all-seeing, and forgive us, for verily you are the most forgiving and most merciful. And may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon Muhammad, his family, and noble companions. Inshallah, if you had missed any sessions, you can go to our YouTube channel, subscribe, and you can watch any of those. Inshallah, they're professionally recorded by our brother, inshallah. And if you would like to sign up for halaqah, to be part of the kind of the pipeline for what we're doing here towards being part of the Mass family, please scan that, get connected with us, and you can also scan this QR code for volunteer sign up. So inshallah, go ahead and gather around, sisters, for a group picture with Sister Dalia. We conclude inshallah, and I'll take care of the picture here. Jazakumullah khair. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.